Welcome to the Own Your Best Life podcast. I'm May Emson, your host, leadership and mindset coach. Here, we talk all things spiritual, mindset, business, leadership, and wellness for the modern seeker who wants to align their life with purpose and inspiration. We'll cover career changes, stress management, meditation, energy, intuition, and more. Each episode holds spiritual and practical tools to help you live a life of your wildest dreams without getting burnt out along the way. Ready to live a life on your own terms? This is the Own Your Best Life podcast. Welcome, friends, to episode number 81 of the Own Your Best Life podcast. So we all dream of this freedom of living life on our own terms, yet we know that we aren't being our true selves in all situations. We seem to live for other people's expectations of us, or we desire validation of other people to know that we're actually doing okay. So what would it look like if you were truly yourself? And what are the 10 things you can do today to be yourself? And we're going to answer those questions in today's podcast. One of the things that we first learn when we start to have more self-awareness is that we don't truly know who we are. We start to see that we have values that we're not living into fully, yet they're driving our life, and they're driving this sense of maybe discontentment or this feeling of not doing the thing you know you should do. We have motivations that are shaping our decisions, and we have unconscious beliefs that we haven't even yet examined. And what it means to be your true self is that you're not just being authentic, but you're being the higher and most conscious version of yourself. And when I say conscious, I don't mean that you're conscious of what others think. Conscious means that you are thoughtful about your behaviors and that you've examined what it means to be this kind of person. I think sometimes people confuse being myself with this sense of entitlement, but it's not about authenticity that is laziness, right? Authenticity isn't laziness. It's going beyond the facade of other people's values and beliefs so that you can own your own life. And when I talk about owning your own life, what would it feel like to completely own all of your decisions without blaming the outside world for how you feel, for not thinking that it's the people, it's the places, it's the things, and those are the reasons that you don't feel the way you want. And this is what it means to be truly yourself, and this is a very different concept for some folks. I think it's hard to detach what is happening outside with what's happening inside. And I'm not saying it will be a quick and easy road, but I want to introduce you to this because it is going to change your life. There's no right or wrong way to be, but there is a completely different accountability that you take with your life, with your presence, and where you are in your journey when you start to own your decisions. And what I found is that, as strange as it may seem to try to be more you, it's actually a worthy pursuit if you want to find even greater success or fulfillment in your life. You will blow away your own expectations of how much more joy and energy you have. And you will start inspiring others because people know the difference between those moments when you're truly living the life that feels aligned with your soul versus just those moments when you are just saying the words. And one of the most profound moments I've had in my own journey of awakening was when I realized that the more authentically I showed up, the more personal power I commanded. And who doesn't want to command personal power? Who doesn't want to feel agency in their lives? Who isn't compelled by the simplicity of living a life where you are more you? And that in and of itself is good for not just yourself, but for those around you. So let's start the drum roll. And here are the 10 ways that I've found have brought about the most transformation in my life and may allow you to be yourself in the process. So the first one is to examine where you are not being yourself. When you think about your personal life, your work life, your friendships, community, do you feel authentic in all of those spaces? Where can you be more vulnerable? Where can you be more honest in asking for what you want? Where do you feel that there is a misalignment? And these are not easy questions, but I think it brings up a huge space where you can start to see that there is more potential for you to show up. When we talk about ways to be yourself, really, this is about opening up more and more access to your natural energy, your natural potential, your natural strength. So allow yourself to see that it's not just a exercise for your head, but it really is, if you're on a achievement mode or you're trying to hit a goal, asking yourself, where am I not being myself, actually becomes your edge. It becomes your calling card. You being more you makes you more unique, and you are then more memorable, and you will have a greater chance of leaving a legacy in this lifetime. Not because you're trying to leave a legacy, but that's just what you do when you are N of one, right? And that's what you are. You are unique, and you are owning that uniqueness today. The second thing you can do is to define your values. Specifically, think about what energy and what emotions are present when you're at your best. And today, just for today, start to count and maybe even journal or write down and take notice of the times when you have not lived in that energy. So an example would be, if you had a moment in your life where you felt really proud of yourself, or this time period, maybe you were feeling really purposeful and you were feeling really certain about things. And you can go through today and say, well, where haven't I felt certainty, or when haven't I felt purposeful? And in those moments, what was happening instead? And when you start to understand, well, maybe having a purpose or being purposeful is a value of mine, or bringing certainty or claiming a sense of calmness around situations is a value of mine, then you start to realize, that's who I want to be, and that's how I want to show up, and that's who I am. And if I want to be more myself, that's a way to live into that. So number 3 is to identify the beliefs you have about yourself. So start to think of the beliefs that feel like they would lead you to a more expansive life with less fear of fear. And you can think of beliefs that would serve you on your journey of developing greater clarity or greater direction. Sometimes we don't know what beliefs we have about ourselves. This is a lot of the work that I'll do with my clients. But one of the ways that you can identify some of your own beliefs that might be holding you back are to think about situations that really trouble you. Things where you feel like you're just not making any progress in, or you're not getting there, quote unquote, there as fast as you want to be, or you just feel a sense of stress or unease or anxiousness start to appear when you think about these things. And I would ask you, what are you thinking during this time? What are you thinking during this time? Because a belief is just a thought that we repeat until we think it's true. And so ask yourself, question the beliefs that you have. And when you do that, you can start to realize, is this really what I want to believe? And if it isn't, then that's a way that you can start to be more yourself. You can start to strip away those beliefs and to live into the ones that actually serve you. All right, number 4 is develop worthiness and abundance as a given. Many times we don't do what we want to do because we don't think we're worthy, or we think we'll lack something in the process. So what would you do if you didn't have to do it for the money, or because other people would think more highly of you? What are all the possible ways that you would spend your time? Who would you serve? What would you do? And how can you be that person who does this today? So I bet that there is something that is on your heart, on your mind, that you've been thinking about, but you feel, well, I'm just not that type of person, and that kind of person would do this, but not me. Or I don't think I have enough money to do this, to take this kind of risk. And I'm not telling you to make irresponsible financial choices, but to question this idea of abundance. Maybe you are at a risk tolerance that is pretty high and you want to take it down a notch. Maybe it's the opposite. So start to just see whether or not your abundance is actually there. Maybe you have more than enough in your life and you're worried about something that isn't really going to happen. Maybe this thing doesn't have as much risk as you thought it would, right? So actually probe there and assume that you can handle a lot more uncertainty than you would have believed. And that if this is something that you've been wanting to do that you think would be part of this journey that you're on to develop yourself and to really truly be the person that you want to be, then you might want to look into it, right? And anything that is holding you back, such as thoughts about worthiness and abundance, likely also need to be examined as well. All right, so that is number 4. Let's move on to number 5. Number 5 is to notice activities you're drawn towards and the strength that they utilize. There are many assessments you can take to determine your strengths. You can also just poll other people around you and ask them what they've noticed. Ask friends or family that you trust, because we're often unconsciously competent in areas where we have true strengths. And when you think about activities, you can relate these to the things that you do where these strengths come out. So a clue for where you're utilizing your strengths is to think about an activity where you seem to just get lost in the moment, an activity where you lose track of time. You feel this rush of energy as if you're connected to something larger than yourself. Maybe it's a sense of purpose. Maybe it's a sense of creativity. Maybe it's a feeling. Maybe it's a feeling of wholeness or of being calm. And then you can ask yourself today, how can I spend more time connecting to that energy? For me, what I've noticed is when I am in nature, I seem to get more lost in the moment, and I seem to have a lot more inspiration come through me. I make a lot of connections, and the strengths that they utilize is for me to see a sense of wholeness, right? The ability to appreciate, to wonder, to learn from the things around me. Learning for me is a huge activity that brings me a ton of joy. And the reason for that is because that's one of my strengths as well, is learning, is in teaching and in improving situations. So I am very much drawn to those things. And when you start to see them as a pattern instead of just random things that you like to do, then you can start to piece together the things that seem to be part of your lifetime's work. And the thing that I will say too around all of this is that as much as you notice if it's a specific activity, it's not really about the thing you do. It's the way you are when you're doing the thing. And the way you are can feel a lot more generic. And this is a huge opening in our lives, because as soon as we start to realize that it's not about the thing we do versus who we are when we're doing it, there are so many more things you can do with that type of energy. So that's a clue, and it's a way to start going inside the psyche, inside the soul, inside your consciousness, instead of working the other way around. And I'm going to talk about these concepts a little bit more so that you get a little bit more accustomed to thinking in this way. All right. The next one, number 6, in terms of ways to be yourself, is to actually develop your intuition. Many of you feel this sense of knowing. You might not even know what intuition is. Maybe you haven't even heard of this idea of developing intuition as something to even pursue. But I would encourage you to be a little more curious about this topic, because it's this idea of starting to understand your inner voice. And sometimes we have a hard time discerning our inner voice that has fear versus the one that might be for our highest good. And the only way you start to realize more and more what the true inner voice sounds like is through practice. So ask yourself, get still and ask yourself questions and hear what comes through. For example, when you think about this question, what does my inner voice tell me about me? What comes through? Right? Just give yourself a space in that moment to pause and to think, what comes through? What does my inner voice tell me about me in this moment? What am I thinking? What am I wondering? Where am I at? Another question you can ask is, are there desires I've been ignoring? Are there directions I haven't followed from my inner voice? And what were the results? You might have this, small inner voice that's like, okay, don't say those things, and don't say those things, don't say those, and you say those things, and you're like, see what happened? You said those things, and everyone erupted around you. Those could be the results that you see in your daily life. So what can you do today? When you bring it back to the day, ask yourself, there's something I'm hearing that's asking me to follow the direction of my inner voice. What is that wisdom? What is that? And for me, I will give an example that just came from today. So I exercise every day, and it is something that is just part of my routine, and I really enjoy it. But there's also a sense of striving sometimes within the exercise itself. And I think as an achiever, you might pick up on this. Sometimes you have a goal and you push really hard to try to get there, and then you injure yourself in the process. Or maybe you just have a goal and you push and you don't even know why you have the goal and you try to do the thing. Or you feel like you should always be doing more than you did the day before. And so for me, even exercise has become this kind of meditative activity, this meaningful activity where I can actually think about, why am I doing this today? And like, what do I want to get out of the movement of my body today? And this morning when I woke up, I was going to ride on the Peloton, and I knew that I had a 45-minute ride ahead of me. And what I could have done was just kind of went right on into it like I have in the last week and listened to an audiobook or do something else like that as I'm riding the bike. But today I actually sat with it and I asked myself, what do I need from this morning? What would serve me the most? And I'm really into right now this idea of really loving and appreciating my body. And one of the things that came through was listen to music, right? Get some really good music playing, really feel into it, just like really enjoy that ride. And so again, it had nothing really to do with this voice of consciousness telling me what my soul's purpose was in the moment. I think sometimes we lose ourselves in these words like intuition, and we think it's about some magic sense that has no application to our daily life. But it's really about dropping deeper into yourself, going beyond the layers of automatic patterns and automatic behaviors, and coming from this place of neutrality and saying, in this moment, what do I need? Or in this moment, what would be appropriate? And that might change how you show up. And it could take you all of a split second. And that is the power of being able to develop your intuition over time. And we will talk about this more in later podcasts, or if you take one of my courses. Over time, the intuition becomes a lot stronger, and it is consistent, and it is something that you can trust. And that is the difference between people who just do things that they feel like doing versus do things that they know is coming from a place of wisdom, a place of experience, a place where they can trust it and they will follow that guidance. So developing your intuition is something you can do today, something right now. In your next moment, you can ask yourself questions just like I did and hear the answers, live into them, do what they say, and then see what happens. That is real life application of intuition. All right, number 7 is to notice your body's reactions. This is really important when we think about being ourselves, because many of us, if we have been achievers or people pleasers, we push past our bodies. We don't utilize our bodies as a way to monitor and understand how we truly feel about a situation. So when you notice your body's reactions, you start to notice where you are incongruent, where you want to feel one way, but you really feel another way. And one question to ask yourself is, where in your body do you seem to store your incongruencies? In yoga, they always talk a lot about the hips. When I was doing my yoga teacher training, that a lot of people store their pain and their tension in their hips, which is why you also have a lot of lower back issues. I think if you resonate with this, you're probably like, oh my goodness, is this what's causing it? It could be, right? This idea that our body will actually hold unreleased emotions, disturbances, stress, and tension. It is not a mystery that when you think something that brings you a ton of anxiety, you start to feel it in your body. That is something we completely understand. Go to the next layer of thinking around it and start to wonder, when I feel stressed, where is it in my body? Get a lot more connected to your bodily sensations. As much as I'm asking you to connect to your thoughts and what's happening in your mind, there's also a translation to how I'm feeling in my body. Because sometimes we have to ask ourselves again, because our bodies might be telling us more of the truth than our mind will, right? And I'm not saying that you don't still do the thing even though you feel anxious or scared. It's quite the opposite. It's just understanding and letting yourself know, hey, I do feel this sense of heightened anxiety. I do feel my heart racing. I'm starting to sweat. I'm getting nervous. I'm about to have a presentation. This is real and this is what's happening, but guess what? It is also okay. And to the way that it relates to being more of ourselves is to realize that even in our most incongruent times where our body hold a lot of tension, the more you understand it, the more we're truly ourselves. Because if you can actually understand how you're really feeling about a situation, you can have that first door opening up to allow yourself to step through it and say, do I want to address this or not? You don't have to address everything that your body's telling you. Like I said, sometimes your body needs to go into fight or flight mode because something's actually happening and you need to utilize all of those healthy body reactions to get you going. But there could also be a situation where that's not the case. And that's the next question, is to say, am I in a situation that's constantly bringing me stress and it doesn't need to? And how can I be more myself, which is to really be in a more calm state when I know that there really isn't a need for me to be in a hyperactive or hypoactive state? Or am I just constantly running on all cylinders all the time, even when there's no threat, no reason to be? And that is being more ourselves, is to start to open that door, question those situations, and then come back to this place of operating from true needs and requests of the moment instead of what's constantly going on in our heads about the things we haven't done, the things we need to do. Oh my God, what's going to happen if I play this forward to the future? And oh my goodness, I think about all the people in the past that have said these things. And then suddenly we feel, right, this huge weight, and we feel depressed, and we feel these hormones of stress that just rush through our bodies. And these are real, and they have real impact on our health and on our lives. And so when we're not feeling ourselves, right, we're not feeling like ourselves. That's one of the ways we can start to dive into that. Okay, that was number 7. Number 8 is to look at the outside world, removing the ties to the outside world. This is something that I think is gonna blow your mind, and it might sound really extreme. But go with me here. Imagine you came into this world again, right here, right now. Like you're just dropped into this planet. What would you pursue and why? This is actually a really interesting question that when Jay and I, this is before COVID, went on a couples trip, just the two of us, we asked ourselves these questions, and it was very enlightening because I think it brings about the sense of understanding, that you might not be who you are right now because of who you actually want to be, but because of the circumstances that have come before in this lifetime. And so just asking yourself that one question can help you move into this next idea, which is number 9, releasing the past. So instead of showing up with all the identities that you've been given or the identities that you've assumed, can you look into this present moment? Can you ask yourself, what does this present moment need from me? And just do that. Do we really have to bring the weight of past relationships, past wrongs, and past judgments into this present moment, especially if we want to feel free? The answer is very much a no, right? We don't need to do that. It's very unlikely that all those things are necessary. Now, I'm not saying abandon ship, run away from all the things, give up your job, give up your home, give up your spouse, your partners, your children, and all the things because I don't want to be a parent anymore, or I don't want to be a spouse, or I don't want to have this sister, brother, mother identity tied to me. But I think that instead of just releasing ourselves from the identities mentally, we think we have to relieve ourselves from these identities physically. You are in a situation in your life that you're in right now, regardless of who you are. There's a role that you're playing, there's a thing that you're doing, there are people around you, there's a place that you're in. You're human, you're alive, and this is just part of being human. And so we get that. Right? We get that. And so as much as that we resist sometimes this idea of why do I have to do all the things, we know that this is part of the human experience. And so let's actually say, okay, given that's the case, what am I taking on that's more than what this situation is providing? When you think about your identity as a parent, for example, sometimes you think all these things. I remember for some people, it's like this idea of like a minivan, like, and that bringing you all these thoughts of like, it's the worst thing in the world. I don't want to be a parent that drives a minivan. I'm so uncool now. And then someone else could be like, oh my gosh, I love minivans. Like, I cannot wait till I get a minivan. I have a friend actually who is like that. So if you're not on the minivan train, just know that there are some people that are. And so within any kind of identity, there's so many ways we can go about it. And so this goes back to your beliefs again, in terms of the things that you assume. Like, you don't need to be a certain kind of mom, dad, brother, sister, employee, worker, all of those things. And when you release more of the ways that you think you have to show up and look exactly at what is happening, there is a child in front of you and they're in your care, and it would be helpful to them for you to feed them right now, or to talk to them about how they're feeling because they seem quite troubled. That is what is needed in the moment. In the moment, you have been hired to do a job and they pay you to do these things, or someone has hired you to do a certain thing. Show up in that moment for them in that way. Instead of, oh my goodness, I am XYZ identity with this job title, and that means this about me, or that means I'm big, or that means I'm small, or that means I'm better than someone, or that means I'm worse than someone. How many of the things that you think are really facts? Very few of them. Very few. You're going to have 6,000 thoughts a day, and very few of them are just actual facts. And so when I talk about releasing the past, there's so much of the things that fill our mind about why we can't wake up tomorrow and actually work out when we said we would, or why do I feel like life doesn't give me the opportunities that it gives someone else. It's all about the past, right? And I think it's hard to give it up because it's comfortable and it's what we know, but I'm telling you that there is a really bright road ahead of you that's filled with a lot more of you being you, and that being great for everyone if you can spend a little bit of time, release what doesn't serve you, and step into what does. Okay, number 10, the last one, is to go inward. go inward, right? Being more yourself. So a lot of times, one of the first things that pops up is this idea of I'm going to have this kind of job and I'm going to dress a certain way and I'm going to live in a certain place and be with these kind of people and have these kind of experiences, and that is me living my best life, being me. And that's a fallacy, guys. And I know this one is really hard to get because what people are selling you is a lifestyle. What people are selling you is the outer. And I'm not trying to sell you on the outer. I'm trying to sell you on the inner. And why? Because that is where you start. When you realize that you are yourself, no matter what the external situation provides, you have found authenticity. When you go beyond your personal ego and the pettiness of day-to-day living and you move to the awakened self who is focused on day-to-day loving, then you are truly you. Right? So this whole thing around being yourself in all these ways are really about untying ourselves from all the ways that we think we have to be ourselves, right? It's almost like we've got trapped in the trap of being ourselves. I remember people saying to me this idea that they want to be different and they don't want to think like everyone else. And I've at times thought the same thing too. And I think there's a difference in saying that I notice what most people around me are doing and I don't want to do that versus I just want to be different, because that's the same thing as saying I want to be normal, right? It's another way of assuming an identity that isn't necessarily yours because you've examined what it means to be different. You just are different by being you, right? So just start there. Like the whole like uniqueness factor and the way that we want to have personal brands is often confused with words and fonts and colors and logos and all these things, when in reality, you don't get any of that without showing up and deciding that there is an authentic way to live no matter what's happening around you, and that's why you want to be that way. That is what the brand is really showing. It is an energy. It is a movement of belief that starts within you. And I think it's actually a really powerful activity to think about personal branding as a way of being even more yourself. And it's hard because we start off first with the external. We think, okay, what am I wearing? Where am I going? What am I drinking? What am I doing? Who am I with? When instead, we really should be saying, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? Right? What energy am I embodying? So loving your life, which is what this is all about, starts with loving you and not the little ego-based you who feels slighted, who feels judged, and so self-conscious about your performance, your appearance, and the things you have or don't have. But the bigger, more expansive you who has a lot more appreciation for life, your role in it, and is aware that as much as you can open up and be more yourself, the less protection you need from all of the people, places, and things you have or don't have to prove to someone else that you are good enough and you're worthy and you are so yourself. So when you're truly being yourself, you're fearlessly living. And not because of a lack of fear. We all have fears and worries and doubts sometimes. You're just removing fear from the way you decide to live. And there's a quote from Winston Churchill that I love, and it's that fear is a reaction. Courage is a choice. And it always reminds me to ask myself, what would courage look like in this situation? Because sometimes we don't feel very courageous, but we have to ask ourselves these questions that allow us to think of a new way of being. So when I think about where I could be more courageous, I think about in terms of communication. The questions would be things like, what would I say and who would I say it to? Even this podcast, as it has evolved and as I started thinking about what I wanted to share and what I didn't want to share, there was this idea of separating spirituality, of separating business. And I've always, and I think if you've listened to this podcast long enough, you'll realize I've always had a huge sense of spirituality running through me. ever since I was a kid. And I don't think that for me, authenticity would look like not talking about it and not sharing it and not at least examining the topics. But I could be more courageous by actually talking about those things that are on my mind. And that's where some of these topics come from. They come from questions that I've had myself, questions that other people have asked me. And I think that when we are more open about sharing what is exactly on our mind, we're diving into that human consciousness even more. We are letting other people know that their situations are more common than they realize, and people feel less alone. And I think more than anything, we want to feel the sense of relief in our lives, that we are understood, that our struggles are not so unique that they have no abatement, right? That there's no relief from it. And I want this podcast to be a place where you can go to ask questions and listen to questions as well. I don't have all the answers. I don't think anyone does. But I do think that when you are allowing yourself to ask questions, then you can find better answers than you ever would have if you've just given up and started doing all of this alone. And so this idea of speaking your truth, I think, is a big one for a lot of folks. It's a sign of growth when you speak your truth, because it requires you to not only understand what your truth is, right? This question of how do I be more myself? What do I care about? What am I naturally drawn towards? What energy do I want to embody? Who would I be no matter what's around me and what's going on? That is a big sense of understanding about yourself. So it requires understanding your truth. How do I feel about this situation? When this problem presents itself at work, how am I going to respond to it? That is your truth as well. And it's also understanding when is it appropriate to share it with others. There are times when you're going to be going on a journey and it is not the time to talk about it. You are not collected enough. You're not sure enough. You don't understand it enough yourself. And that is okay. But I think that that is the next level of communication, of speaking your truth, that is actually required for you to show up really authentically. Because this is where I want to be able to draw the line between the difference of laziness of showing up as myself. Like, here I am, blah, like I didn't try. and I'm just raw, but not raw in an honest and serving way, but raw in a like, this is all I can do, but I'm not even trying to be helpful. Like, I'm just trying to, almost because I resent all the things that have come before. And this happens, so it's not wrong, but I want you to understand the difference, because there are times when we have nothing left to give in our tank and we're going to show up authentically, where our hair is going to be crazy and our kids are not going to be combed and clothes changed, and that is fine. That is completely fine. That is authentically living your truth as well. But there's also the authentic truths of like, who do you really want to live into, and what kind of energy do you want to have in your life that might require a bit of a lift from you. And it requires a little bit of thinking and processing and questioning. And just because there's a little bit of effort, I don't want you to think that being yourself doesn't require some effort. And I hope that you're getting that differentiation. And I think you know it, because if you're listening, you're probably already that kind of person who is very thoughtful about how to show up in a way that serves you and others as well. All right. So all of this starts with you, right? This communication piece starts with you. It starts with a lot of questioning the way that you've always done things. And if you're feeling like you're in a place, and this is where I want to, kind of wrap this up, but if you're feeling like you're in a place where you're stagnant, but you're ready for growth and you're not sure where to go for it, I encourage you to start with this aspect of being more you. the answers to what job am I looking for? How can I make the most of my time? What should I do next? How do I get better at relationships? How do I make more money? How do I live more fearlessly and joyfully are always there. And this is the transformation that occurs when you realize that you can feel more alive in every moment, not by changing who you are to fit each scenario you're in, but by allowing each circumstance to be a training ground for you to live into who you really are, right? So you decide who you want to be no matter what, and you stay that course. All right, my friends, that is it for this week. I love you dearly, and I will see you next time. And if this topic resonates with you and you want to see transformational results in your own life, you will love coaching. Getting coached consistently is the spark that lights that fire of inspiration to make the change you are looking to make. And it is that first step in creating clarity in your goals, in making a massive shift and moving the obstacles out of your way so that you can move forward today. You can go to www.mayemson.com/contact to learn more. Thanks so much for joining us this week on Own Your Best Life. Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts so that you'll never miss a show. And while you're at it, can you please rate and review on iTunes? I would so appreciate it. Share it with a friend, take a screenshot of it, and tag @MayEmson. This helps continue to get the word out. For more show notes and resources, check out www.mayemson.com. You'll have all the links to everything you heard here today. Thanks so much for listening. It's time to own your best life.